not really commonly known, but one of the worst massacres to happen to Australian soldiers was right here in this town in Moi. Now have a look at this creepy place. This sort of bungalow is rumoured to be one of the bungalows here in amongst the jungle that was used for the massacre. There's a bunch of them all the way down these roads that are just in the middle of nowhere, all the way to Parrot Salong, this small town. And this is where anywhere between 200 to 300 Australians and Indians were murdered. How crazy is this bungalow? It's beautiful, isn't it? What a creepy little place, huh? So as the Japanese pushed further and further down Malaysia, the Allied troops have to withdraw constantly. They lose another town to the Japanese and they fall back. Now the Japanese were quite fast with their advance. This happened very quickly. They landed in Kota Bharu late December 1941. And they were in this town already in January 20th. They were in Moi. Now our story is going to be highlighted around a guy named Ben Hackney, Lieutenant Ben Hackney. Crazy thing is, man, he was the same age as me, 1 year older. He was 26 at the time. So after the Japanese overtook Moi, which Moi is that way, the center of the town's behind us, the 2nd 29th Division, which was the Australian battalion, and the 45th Brigade, which was the Indians, they were retreating all the way down this road, making their way to Parrot Salong, which was the last bridge in which they could escape this area. They weren't just running away, they were putting up a pretty good fight as they were retreating. Some of the best retreating fights that happened in World War II, some of the best battles. Any soldiers that weren't wounded, which there was truckloads of them, Ben Hackney included, one of his legs was broken. Any soldiers that were okay would set up road blockades and destroy anything they could. Supposedly they, on the way back to Parrot Salong, which we're in now, they blew up a dozen Japanese tanks or so, just in the retreat alone. And they were falling back to this point, the bridge up ahead, because that was their only way of getting out of this area, their one and only exit option, which the British still had in their control. So there was a massive group of them, 50 or 60 vehicles, a bunch of infantry on foot, everyone just pushing back to this bridge while constantly setting up blockades and fighting the Japanese. They're retreating all the way back to this bridge, and guess what? The Japanese have flanked them. The British have lost control. The Japanese have already been here for like 2 days waiting for them to come here. This wasn't set up too long ago. Parrot Salong Massacre, January 1942. So they get here only to find that the Japanese have flanked them. They try to get some medical trucks through with the injured men, but the Japanese don't allow it. And the colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Anderson, he ordered every man for himself, basically. So any of the men that could still walk and move, they tried to get through the jungle and make it to an Allied stronghold somewhere. So you can imagine, none of this was palm. There's no palm plantations or anything. This is just thick jungle, right? And all the wounded men, of course, including Ben Hackney, they had to stay here and surrender to the Japanese. They thought that maybe the Japanese would allow the Red Cross to come through and pick up the 200 to 300 wounded men. But of course that didn't happen, with the reputation that the Japanese have. Now all the men were either put into houses, set on fire. A lot of the Indians were beheaded. And anywhere from 200 to 300 of these men died in this massacre right here. A lot of their bodies dumped into either the river, a river like this. Some of them were wrapped up in barbed wire, walked to the end of the bridge or the side of the bridge, and they'd shoot one person so that he'd fall and everyone else would fall in the water with him. So people drowning, people were getting dragged up and down in the trucks. I mean, it's proper hectic. I'm not really too sure how much detail I can go into. You can imagine it, right? Just the most brutal things you can imagine. Now, Ben Hackney, the amazing thing with him, the Japanese went along after. There's photos where there's just bodies lining each side of the road, and the Japanese are walking up and down with their bayonets, poking people to make sure that they are unalived. And Ben Hackney faked being dead. He was able to not flinch. He got stabbed half a dozen times or so. And remember, he still has a broken leg. So he's got a mangled leg and one broken leg. And that dude managed to drag himself off into the jungle. And you know, for 6 weeks, he dragged himself through the jungle, drinking from puddles, eating cockroaches or bugs or whatever he could get his hands on. Sometimes the villagers would help him out and give him some water and some food. For 6 weeks, he dragged himself through the jungle because he can't walk. Absolutely mad. And only to be picked up and caught by the Japanese once again. And then he was sent off to the death camps along the Burma Railway. After surviving all of this, Ben Hackney survived the Burma Railway, the death camps. And he was interviewed about 10 years later. Back in Australia, he'd bought a farm in Bathurst, which is only about 10 hours away from where I grew up. How crazy is that, huh? Same age as me, man. 26 years old, going through all of this.